Hey, sorry for the interruption. I'm back. I just had to switch rooms because somebody else who lives in the same house as me heard like all what I was saying, and I was making too much noise, so I had to switch rooms. But this is the continuation of the religious and spiritual experience I had like when I was younger and now and everything. So anyway, as I was saying, I left off last video where I was talking about this, where my basically my mind, my brain, everything changed dramatically after this conversation with my mom's friend Peter, and about spirituality, about religion, about philosophy, everything, logic, everything. And I started thinking logic is nonsense. Oh my god! Like I just had this kind of panic attack where I thought that logic was nonsense. That mm, nothing made sense. That everything. How could I even have standards that way? And how could I even exist that way? How could what if I don't exist? It just got ridiculous. I started thinking nothing is everything, everything is nothing. What if it says that in the Bible? Somebody said it did, and whatever, and then like anyway, I took this math test. I took this math test at school the next day, and then I like normally I would have failed the test, but because I was so like my mind was just broken so open that my brains were falling out, but at the same time it made me open minded to enough to think about a different way to pass the math test, and I ended up getting 95% on a test that I normally would have gotten like 40% on. So that was a good thing, but it was not something that was humane because I was thinking all kinds of, you know, stuff that was just, out of, like what if we could just be destroyed? Nothing makes sense, so that means anything can happen. And mm, I mean, it was exhilarating in a way, but it was mostly negative experience for me. And it was an experience that I, was couldn't stop thinking about for 4 months until I started thinking, okay, maybe this isn't true. Maybe this, logic. Started thinking logically again and all that. But, and that was a good thing because, like, at least I wasn't thinking so, in my way that I, assumed was logical, that I was just disregarding certain stuff and all that. And something that, and my mom wasn't very helpful with all that, but she was very helpful with one comment she made where she was like, well, not, she didn't say it like where one century's, like technology is another century's magic, or, but she meant that, like it was what she said was that, well, just because it's what some people don't understand, you know, it's technology just the same. It's not, and she said it was magic, but like, it's not magic, it's just technology we don't understand. And that is something that was like a breakthrough for me, and it was something that I understood before. Like sometimes I'm just like, yeah, reincarnation could exist, for example. I was thinking, it's just, but it seemed like such a long shot, and I was hoping it existed, and that there was an afterlife, but it seemed like such a long shot, and I didn't want to just blindly believe it. I wanted to know what the truth was and believe the truth, but I was hoping the truth was good news, just like we all do, and it is, but we'll get to that later. But um I didn't know, like I was so confused. It was just so awful. And um anyway, yeah, this guy named Peter, we would have these philosophical discussions since I was a little kid and stuff. Especially like when I was 16, when I was so confused that time and everything. And and he said at the same time, nothing isn't everything, everything isn't nothing, but yet he just said that it like what like that, like, oh, if all of these, like, contradictions exist and it's just some miracle, but yet it doesn't make sense, like what? And I don't know what he was driving at. And my mom said, "Oh, he just made you more confused." And I don't know, but mm, anyway, I'm not confused about that now, but I was back then, and it was terrible. And I had these discussions online with people about religion, about spirituality, and some of them were religious, very religious people from the South, and some of them were, very liberal people from New York, and you know, um, and then there was like, stuff I read that I was hoping was true about mystical experiences, but I was worried they were just lying, or that the author of the compiler of the book got them to just lie just so that they could write a book about it. And I was hoping that wasn't true. And then there were people talking about past lives and everything, and I had no idea. But yet I didn't put two and two together, or I did, and I got like five, or I got three instead of four. Because like there were memories I had when I was very young that did not jive at all with the life like that I had this time. And I didn't realize, hey, that's from a different life, but yet I did. Back then, I did think that it could be reincarnation. Even when I was like, 3, 5 years old, I was thinking this could be a different life I had. I didn't know the term reincarnation. I wouldn't have used that word. I didn't have the vocabulary to explain it. I was 3 to 5 years old, and, not even, educated or anything about that, or even about much, but like, I mean, I was in kindergarten or like in preschool, whatever, and So, but yet I was thinking, yeah, this could be another life I had or whatever. But then I'm also thinking, in the back of my mind, yeah, it's probably just a TV show I saw. It's probably just brainwashing, even though I didn't know that term. It's probably just, something I heard, or just like something I misremembered from this life that actually did happen in this life, but I don't remember it properly, or, you know, um, like I didn't really believe, like I wanted so badly to believe, but only if it was true. And I wanted so badly to believe for it to be true, but yet I didn't want it to be like nonsense and to be true if it was impossible, because then everything, there would be no standards and we could just disappear and be nothing. And oh, that, now that's scary. But even though that's impossible, but I didn't, I was just insecure about stuff like that. And I didn't put two and two together also with the law of the conservation of matter, which I didn't know it was called that, but I sensed that that was true. Nothing just disappears. Other times I was, when I was 16, that time where I was so insecure, after the conversation with Peter, it was just yanking my strings basically. But before that, it was like I was very, very firm into the conservation of matter. I believed it totally, and I still do. And I obviously will always, and but on every level. But like the law of the conservation of matter, nothing, no matter can be created or destroyed, and souls are matter. If everything's matter, if you're such a materialist, then souls are matter, therefore souls exist, therefore souls can't just be created or destroyed, so therefore there's an afterlife. So and therefore, there could be reincarnation, which there is, and that's another, can of worms I'll get into, like in this one and in another one. But anyway, I was having these memories where there was this grandmother that was not either of my grandmothers in this life, and there was this house that I'd never seen before in this life, and there was this, like, a few houses that I'd never seen before in this life, and I hadn't had much experience because I was only 3 to 5 years old. So I'm thinking, where did this even come from? Where is this place? And I remembered everything, every place I'd ever been back then, because I hadn't been to many places back then. I was only 3 to 5 years old, and I remembered, so I remember pretty much every place, where, in the neighborhood where I'd been and where I'd ever been, that I remembered. And, as that, but yet I remember being 5 years old and being at this grandmother's place that was not any of my grandmother's houses, and this grandmother that wasn't my grandmother, but yet she was my grandmother. And it's like, and she was saying that it's May 1st today, your birthday, except my birthday is January 2nd. And I was surprised, actually, when I was 3 years old or two, and I learned that my birthday was in January, and that it was on the 2nd, because I was thinking, why is it not the 1st? And I was thinking, why is it not May? Why is it not spring? Why is it why is it in winter? And why is it, January and not May for some reason? And then I was thinking, why are we Protestant? Why are we not Catholic? I thought we were Catholic. Last life we were Catholic. That's a spoiler, I just told you. It was a past life. And I actually did confirm this, because other people from that past life, we get reincarnated with the same group of people. And a lot of people, know that. A lot of people, have their own experiences with that. Just check out the groups on Facebook. Just check out, everything. And, the some websites, where they, people share their experiences with that. And so I know I'm not alone, and that I'm not nuts, in that way at least. And that, I'm not delusional about that. Even if, we're all delusional about some things, but it's not that I'm delusional about if I'm some sort of delusional person, and like, if I'm nuts, it's not about that. Like, that's not a symptom of me being nuts. Okay. There's a lot more, worse things about me than, things that are not so, that are not true, that they could be picking on me for. So why would anybody, why should they be picking on me, for, why should anyone be saying, oh, you're delusional about this? When, just to hear me out here or whatever. It's not like I'm saying that, like, something impossible is happening, and they probably think I am, and they probably, like, because they think that I'm trying to say that, like, that there's no standards in the universe, and that, everything's nonsense. And I'm not saying that at all. Nothing's nonsense. Everything has a purpose. Everything is, logic and everything. It is logic. It is matter. It is, it's not, what I thought when I was 16, where I was so confused. But, but anyway, when, so I had these, like, and when I saw this, I was watching this movie when I was about 3 years old, and it reminded me of this other time where I was, in this house, this big house, and my father was a professional baseball player, and, anyway, like, it turns out this was all true, because people, that I was reincarnated with, who were people I knew last life. And now a lot of them are close to me in this life too. And some of them are just like arch enemies of me in this life. And some of them are just questioning who I like am in this life, even though they admit that they remember, their own experiences from that life. And we've talked about it at length, actually, some of us. And there's about 30 of us, in this, group that we know of, who we know who they were last time and everything. And that's something I'll get into in a bit. And we made a list, everything, who was who last life and other lives too that we remember, because it's soul families. We all have our soul family. Nobody's alone. Nobody is the only person like themselves. Nobody is, somebody that's going to die alone, and, except, as, maybe the only person in the room that's, they're alive, but nobody dies alone. And that's a spoiler, and you might not believe it. You might believe it. I don't know, but I believe it, and I know it. It's just you might not believe it. That's what I mean by I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you believe it. But, and, I'm a fan of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross besides, and she just resonated with me. Well, things don't resonate with us by accident. There's always a reason for it. And it's not, coincidences are not magical. Coincidences are for a reason. It's because, well, they're meant to be there. It's because it's for a reason. It's for a logical reason. And spirituality and logic are not opposites. They're the same thing. They're not, mutually exclusive, and they're not even exclusive of each other. They can't even be exclusive of each other. That's impossible. And people are trying to make us believe that so that we forget, because it benefits them for us to forget. It benefits them to, be able to keep us as, their factory slaves or whatever, where we don't believe in anything beyond the end of our noses, because, we don't even believe that there's an outside of the factory kind of thing, because how could that's a pie in the sky thing. That's not even real. Real is right here and now. Real is, there's no outside of the factory. We'd die if we went outside the factory kind of thing, There's no outside, and that's not true. And we know that underneath. Everybody knows that underneath. We just lose track. We're human. And the people that are trying to, keep us under their control by, well, they were dehumanized themselves. They were, told, like that, they're not people unless they, overachieve, or, so then they're trying to overcompensate and become the boss of the world. And then in order to do that, they have to keep us under their control, and they have to keep us ignorant in order to do that. And in order to make us believe in them, they think they have to make us forget, what we really need to be believing in here. And that's not true. We can believe in each other. We can believe in ourselves. We need to, but nobody is above everybody else. It doesn't mean that they're lower than they thought they were. It just means everybody is above what they thought they were. We can bring everybody up to the same level, not down to the same level. We don't need to bring everybody down to the same level. We can bring everybody up to the same level. We can bring everybody, there's no hierarchy. It's not like that. It doesn't have to be like that. It's not necessary. It's not humane, and it's not even based on the truth. So why are we even thinking like that? And it's because we're depressed. I mean, it's because we're brainwashed and depressed by, and this is how we get back to the original depressives, which is like a theory I had where, we're all the original depressives, because we're all reincarnated from who we were before, where we were thinking, all of this depressing stuff about how we have to have shame and guilt and fear, like existential fear, in order to keep us in line for what, though? What kind of a life is that? What are we even doing this for, if not for quality of life for everyone? I mean, what kind of a life is that? What's even the point of it if it doesn't cause anything positive, any happiness, It's just like good and happiness are some, it's like the Puritan attitude that good and happiness are opposites, and only the higher ups deserve to be happy. And once you start, thinking, okay, good, I'm not happy, that means I'm a good person somehow, but then suddenly, you start to think that, oh, good, or, oh, I'm a good person, and, oh, you're slipping, you better start thinking you're bad again, and but who gets to tell us that? And they're happy, that we're, acting that way, but yet suddenly, why do they have the right to be happy and us not? Like, why the hierarchy, and why the, like, why do they have more rights than us, and why do we have less than them, rather, and it's the Puritan way, and it's not a good, thing. It's toxic. It's a cult, and no, or where we, only have the right to feel okay or to feel happy once we're dead. So we live to die and we have to live miserable for 90 years or 80 years or whatever. What kind of a life is that? How do we even function that way? We function by, enjoying doing the work, not, by, hating it, but and thinking that we're, moral for being miserable. That's impossible. And I know I'm taking this literally, maybe, and they meant something slightly different by it, but, not always. Sometimes they do take it literally and they do think they're better than us, because they're allowed to be happy that we're miserable, but we're not allowed to be happy that we're miserable or that we're happy or anything. Like, who put them in, who died and left them in charge, Mm. And who gives them the right over our life, whatever. And back to the original depressives, where we are the original depressives. We're the one that passed it down to ourselves because we reincarnated as people that, and sometimes we're, my husband found out that he was, that some of the people that our soul group was reincarnated from last time, because we know some of the names of the people we were, like our relatives, like ancestors of him this time, and some of them aren't, but like because everybody's related and all that. But like he does ancestry stuff sometimes, and he finds out, that he was ancestor to that one or this one that was actually himself. So we're our own ancestors, and then, well, it's very interesting, and I'll talk more about reincarnation and everything in another like episode of this and everything. But we found out and we confirmed stuff. I mean, we confirmed stuff materially and by asking each other trick questions, which we never got wrong. And we would ask, like, okay, well, what color was this person's hair? What color was, what was the, arrangement of the room? And we would always get it right, and when we didn't get it right, it was miscommunications. It was like, because he was standing here and I was standing there, his left was my right. So he's like, that was on the left. No, that was on the right. And then we realized, oh, because you were standing there and I was standing there. And so it was just, it always checked out. It always did. And it did with other people too. People he met, people I met, people we both met, people we both knew. He knew, I was close to, he was close to, we both were close to. And then people who were like not so close to us, or who were just, not people who didn't like us at all, whom we, didn't like, who picked on us, who hated us, who, we were enemies with, or whatever. Anyone, and people we thought were friends who weren't, and family who went rogue or whatever, like in this life, in that life. And there are people we just met in passing whom we knew who they were, and sometimes they didn't know, and sometimes they don't know still. But one of them was a psychologist I had when I was 19, and he was a Buddhist. Well, he is a Buddhist. I think he is still, probably. I don't know. I think he is, because he even called me by a name I had in a past life, and I think he remembered more than he was letting on, and he was trying to gently, have me remember, but he didn't want to like be unprofessional. He didn't want to like force like, religious and stuff. But I was talking about spirituality. He even said, he went there. It's not that he didn't, but he said he was a Buddhist. He said and he called me by a name that, I later learned from my husband. And then I remembered, that was one of my names in a past life that I had centuries ago. And then I remembered him, that psychologist who was a peasant in that life in Germany. And I was like someone who worked on a manor in Germany. My husband also worked on that manor, and we, met and married there on that manor that belonged to like a duke that had divorced himself from the royal family. Anyway, that's a whole other story. I can get into that some other time. But anyway, I did know, a lot of people I know, and some of them remember, some of them don't. But we asked each other trick questions. We always remembered, and some things I already knew the answer to, but I would ask them, and they would tell me exactly what the answer was that I already knew. So I knew that it was true. It's not something that, it wasn't wishful thinking. It wasn't just us making it up. It wasn't us being nuts and just hallucinating it. It wasn't us just having delusional wishful thinking where we're hallucinating it and wishfully thinking or anything like that. It wasn't we were brainwashed or in a cult. It wasn't like, it wasn't that like we were trying to just fit in or, be accepted by each other, by somebody else. It wasn't like we were misremembering something from this life. It wasn't that there was just too much, it was not coincidences at all. And nothing is a coincidence. And Elizabeth Kubler-Ross even says, it's not like I'm saying that just because she said it, but I'm so glad I'm not alone. That's why I'm saying, Elizabeth said that too. I'm a big fan of hers. Yeah, she's made mistakes. We all have, but like, I'm a big fan of hers. And, like, I'm a fan of her books. I read like her book, The Wheel of Life, which I was meant to find and read, but it's something that, I'm so glad that, like, I almost didn't read it. I'm like, nah, nah, nah. This is just another, run of the mill. I've been here before, read stuff about this kind of thing. But then my friend read it and she told me to read it. She said that this woman reminded her of me, with the wanting to start a commune and wanting to, the spiritual stuff. So then I read it and I loved that book. And that book was like my Bible for a long time. I took it everywhere with me. I read it again and again until it fell apart. And then me and my husband read it together online, and we read other books of hers together online, and it's just a very 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 good book. It's very uplifting. She reached a lot of people, and yeah, she was a psychiatrist, but yet people were concerned about her mental health just because she was into spirituality and was a big advocate for spirituality and for validating the spiritual experiences, the near death experiences people had, the out of body experiences, the mystical experiences people had. They were, concerned for her mental health, wanting her to lose her license, but she never lost her license. And that should say something. She never lost her license to practice medicine, never lost her license to practice psychiatry. She died with that license. So, that should tell you something. I mean, it doesn't tell you everything because society, what they do to us doesn't reflect on us. It reflects on them. But the fact that they were saying all this stuff about her, well, we're concerned for her mental health. She's gone nuts. She's, spent too much time around dying people and gone nuts. But yet, she never lost her medical license over it. And they were never, I don't think that was even up for, possibility or anything like that. So that should say something. And she was still able to perfectly, be a doctor and everything. It's not like she was some sort of nuts person that was out there and just not even, and nobody's not all there. That's nonsense. That's the most dehumanizing thing you can say about somebody, that they're not all there. I mean, that is the basis of all, sexism, racism, ageism, ableism. It's all about they're not all there. And that is not even okay. Like, that is just, I would rather say anything about somebody than they're not all there. And I'd rather have anything said about me than that I'm not all there, or just not there at all, or just not even existent, and that I'm just some sort of thing that was programmed to pretend that that it is sentient, because that is not even possible. Everything is sentient, and even and as for like us and organisms, well, not only are they sentient, but they have something in them that's sentient, and that's our soul. That's who we are. So I shouldn't say it's our soul. It's who we are. It's not something we have. It's something we are. Our body is something we have, and people say that all the time, but it's true. And and I'm not saying that our mortal vessel isn't something sentient. It is, but it's perfectly happy to be in the ground, being eaten up, and it's not something that's going to suffer when we leave it. And just like we're not suffering from our other bodies we had before being in the ground being eaten up. And like, we don't care that our that who we were before was eaten by the the worms, like, because we have a new one, and we're still alive, obviously, and we're going to always be alive, and we have another chance and everything, and we have this one now. But and now we're like together again, like in this life, and it's not that we're gonna keep getting reincarnated forever and ever. I believe, my belief is that eventually everybody will, like, everybody's invited to the party. Not everybody hangs out together at the party. I mean, you still hang out with your own friends, but everybody's invited. And that's a good analogy, I think. That like, eventually there's going to be the peace on earth thing that a lot of religions have believe, and I believe it too, that eventually there's not going to be any death. It's just going to be everybody's alive, and it's a very solid thing. It's not like we're just going to be a bunch of ghosts or vapor or something. I mean, it's a very solid place, the afterlife too, just like here. But I mean, it's not going to be the afterlife. It's going to be here. It's going to be on some planet or other, probably this one. And and everybody's going to be alive on whatever planets they're on. I don't believe this is the only one that people are alive on. And that we just end up just existing forever on it, still learning, still growing, still finding out new things, because it's boring. We don't know everything. How can we anyway? And but we at least know what we're the essential things. So we're not going to be suffering and wondering in this kind of angsty way anymore. It's just we're going to enjoy learning and everything and finding out new things, because we're going to at least know the basics, like basics, the baseline for quality of life and for like spiritual health, I guess, which is more important than anything else because it's about our connect. It is our connection to each other and to God or gods or whatever you want to call it. We'll call them whatever, and all that. So and I could just go on and on and on and on about all this, and I will go on and on because well, I want to, and what's wrong with that? I will go on and on for whatever whoever wants to listen, and some people will because I'm not here to make people like force people or anything like that. That's against what it's all about. That's the opposite. That's like denying people's free choice and everything and denying people's quality of life because they're not even allowed to think for themselves or else they get punished somehow. Like that's horrible. And because if you're just believing something not because you believe it at all but because somebody is forcing you to, or else, first of all, that's just terrible in its own right. And second of all, how are that doesn't mean they're believing it. It means they're pretending to, for our sake or for, to prevent being punished or, to stay safe, to stay popular or to get what they want. And that is not, that's not a humane, way to live. What kind of a life is that? So, and what kind of any spiritual life is that anyway? That's not, being who you are. It's not being spiritual. It's just being, trying to be acceptable, trying to be palatable, trying to be, not politically correct exactly, but just correct in some, to certain people. And it's just you're putting certain people's values above your own, above everybody else's. It's like you're selling out to somebody who thinks they're better than everybody else, and that's not okay. That's not a way to exist or anything. What kind of a life is that? And it's also not even, it's not based on truth. It's not based on trying to find out truth. It's not humane, and it's not necessary ever. And because it's not true or humane, it's not accurate, it's not humane, and it's not necessary because it's not accurate and because it's not humane, and also in its own right it's not necessary. So what was I gonna say? I forgot. But I'll get around to it. I'll remember. But um uh but anyway, all this to say, I just wanted to say, like, I hope this helps somebody. I hope it helps me meet some, like, people who are in our soul family, because some of the ones we thought were in our soul family we kind of are on the outs with or whatever, because maybe they're in our anti-soul family. I don't know, because there's opposites too, and sometimes those opposites, we thought were friends, we thought we were, well, that's how an enemy happens. We think they're a friend at first. It's like an ex or a an ex friend, an ex partner, an ex family member, whatever, an ex neighbor whom we thought was a nice person, but then, or thought was our soulmate, and then they turn out to be our anti soulmate, where in a past life they could have been somebody horrible to us. And that's what happened with one of my exes, the one that I had my son with. He was actually somebody that was abusive to me last life, whom I had a lot of kids with last in that life. But he was abusive to me, and and then in this life I had a son with him. My son actually is reincarnated from a few times. Like, he was my son in a few other lives too, and one of them, he was a miscarriage I had. Like, in a past life, in last life, he was my first child who was a miscarriage. Like, in that life I never had a miscarriage. In this life, and I only had one child in this life, but in my last one I had five, including the first one who was a miscarriage. A boy who was either born dead, or maybe he wasn't a miscarriage, maybe he was born, he died shortly after he was born, but I don't remember exactly, but he died pretty fast. And he was alive until he was born, and that's the day he died, but that's all I remember from that life about him. And my husband in this life, the guy I'm with now, who's my soulmate, like, for forever and ever. We've always been together in, like, every life that I remember. And in some of the lives, like, we were a gay couple, and others I was a woman and and he was a guy. And then I don't remember anywhere where I was a guy, like, and he was a woman, because I was a guy in some of the lives and we were a gay couple. Like, in Japan, there was one where, like, he was a guy, I was a guy, and we had to hide it and everything, and because of samurai culture. And anyway, I can get into it. I can get into it all day. I can get into it all week. But anyway, this is now I'm getting, like, off topic about my experience, like, with um, religion and spirituality and everything. And let's get back to that. And where like when I was a kid, yeah, there was like I had various religious experiences and various spiritual experiences, but I didn't recognize them as that. Like I put two and two together and got five or got three. I didn't get four. Like eventually, I just stopped believing. That that my memories before reincarnation, or I thought it was just a waste of time to think about it because I thought, well, how am I going to find out anyway? How would I ever find out? I should think about something else. And I also just wanted to be seen as a logical person. And the moment I started, not being seen as such a logical person, I doubled down and started becoming more supposedly logical or whatever, because I didn't want to be seen as an irrational person that just was not there. And I didn't want to be seen as that. I didn't want to be dehumanized. I wanted to be seen as somebody who could think properly, I guess. But that backfired because then I was seen as a heartless person after by some people. And you can't win. You have to just be yourself. And that's how you win. You don't play the game. You just be yourself. And it's like, but they tell you to play the game, and that just confuses you and makes you think you have to, and it makes you think you have to survive, especially when you're a child and you've never seen, much better, much more than that, in your current life, and you think you have to just to survive. That's all you see, so that's all you think your environment is. So then you try and, adjust to your environment just to survive, just to avoid dehumanization or to literally avoid, anything like that's like dangerous physically or anything like that, or it really depends on your values and also on where you're at in your situation and all that. But uh, anyway, like I have various experiences, both mystical and I mean we all do. Sometimes we just don't recognize it as that, and we'll never like believe it until we are able to logically figure out how it could be possible. And that's why I didn't recognize it as that at first. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross even says, so they will never believe it until they're ready and all that. They have them too. They just don't realize it. And I was like that too to a large extent. Like we all are, here and there. And I was just my because a lot of kids when they're that age, when they're like 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, they remember past lives and then they regret it. They're told that's all in your head and that's all a bunch of nonsense, that you're just like daydreaming and making up, and stop telling lies and stop telling tall tales. And I mean, it's not that I was told that, it's just I didn't really tell anybody about that, and I just thought it was a waste of time automatically somehow. And like to even go there, and I thought I would never find out anyway. What's the point? And it's probably just false and in my head anyway. And but I remember feeling very sad and kind of depressed and wanting, very much longing, when I saw a movie or a TV show when I was 3 years old. I was longing for this other time when I felt like I was this little girl in this house where this very close friend of mine, who turns out to be my husband in this life, and we were always together in every life as a couple and as friends a lot of the time first. And where like I had this exciting kind of very wholesome life, where in that life, like where I was like I had siblings, I had a family. It was like there was a dog, there was a big house. It was this all American kind of dream thing, where my father was a baseball player professionally, and I know who he was now. It wasn't my father this time, it was just somebody else, like a different father. And and this person hasn't been reincarnated yet. I don't know if they will be. Some of them just stop being reincarnated, because well, they either learn their lesson or they just want to learn it somewhere, some other way other than by being reincarnated. And so he's still on the other side from what we know, from what me and my husband know. And he's just like he sometimes, I mean, he actually came to me once in this life. And other times I just had dreams about him, like when I was 16 and going through all that angst, like about like religion and spirituality and all that with Peter, and also just in my personal life, it was just a mess and all that. So I had this visitation from my grandmother who had died this life when I was 10 years old. Different grandmother than I had last life, different person, not the same person, not a reincarnation of her or anything. And and she was just basically telling me everything would be fine, but just sitting there listening. But I didn't really, is this real, is it not? But I kind of believed it was. And I know now that it was. But and even my parents thought, yeah, that was a that's this or that, that she had said, that's something she'd really say, and that's how she really dressed back then, and that's how all those people that you saw in the background, they really dressed like that back then. And that's how they'd really act and all that. And yeah, that was a visitation from your grandmother. Probably she just wanted to see how things were going. 5 years after she died, when wanted to see how her grandchild was, like now at 15, 16 years old. And because the last time she'd seen me, I was like 9 or 10. And then anyway, um, but and then shortly after I had that dream where I had that visitation with her, I had another one where I was this little girl in the northern United States somewhere in a house in this town, and and I saw very clearly, what this was a very 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 clear dream where I saw the inside of the house very clearly, the outside of it very clearly, like the surroundings, I mean, outside, and like the people who they were, and who and the plot. It had a plot. It had a and a lot of my dreams do have a plot and everything, but they don't make sense the way this one did. And like characters, and they all do, but a lot of did back then a lot of the time. But this one made a lot more sense than they did, like to this particular like world and like life and everything in this part of the world and everything. So it wasn't just like psychic runoff of any on any level. It was because we confirmed it later with like information that we would just type in stuff into Google, about like what we remembered, and then we would come up with stuff that actually happened. And um like that's gonna be another story. So it'll be another story um where I tell it. Maybe I'll tell that one next, where how we found out who we were last life and everything and how we met each other. Because a soul family, a soul group, soul circle, whatever you want to call it, is like a group of strings, and souls are strings. I'll get into that can of worms later. But souls, like it's like they're tied together, like a group of a soul family is tied together closely. It's like a bunch of strings that are tied together closely. You pull on one, all the others go with it. It's not like you can just separate them. And like when you're a soulmate with someone, the strings are actually tied kind of around each other or alongside each other, touching each other or something, where you're mirrors of each other. And that's the whole twin flame thing, also. And me and Teddy, my husband, we're that. That's what we are. And it doesn't mean we're the same person in two different bodies. It just means, in our case, that we're two people who mirror each other. And so that's and I don't believe that like it's literally like the same person in two bodies. A lot of the time it's because otherwise already they'd know each other perfectly. They wouldn't be each other. It would be one person. So uh but like so yeah, me and Teddy are, have always been that close and everything. And doesn't mean, that everything always turned out, or that, we always died together, or that we were always good people, or because we weren't. And nobody was, but like always, except for the ones that are lucky enough. Like, Teddy calls them the Lunatara, where, they would, one of the ones that talked to us, Father Raymond, he uh as Father Raymond, like he how do you say, he manifests as Father Raymond, who's that's what we call him, what he calls himself sometimes. But I mean, and he was the priest that like in a past life married us in a past life in Germany in the 16th century, in the 1500s. He married us on the manor that we were working on for the Duke. And we had like a wedding that a lot of the people in this life went to, including my friend whom I live with, who's my roommate. He doesn't remember right now. And then this other guy who was my psychologist in this life years ago, the Buddhist guy. And he was actually a peasant in that life, and he, went to our wedding too. He was one of the peasants that came to the events for the peasants where they would be fed and everything by the Duke. He was a very nice guy. He had divorced himself from the royal family, didn't believe in their values, all that, and all the crap, that was going on with like royals and that. And he just wanted independence and wanted to do his own thing and wanted all that. Anyway, that's a different thing. But anyway, I'll shut up now. I'll start like other videos about spirituality or whatever I feel like talking about, whatever, because I'm bored. I have nothing better to do today. And because I want to meet people. I want to meet people that, we might have known. There's some that we knew and we're very close to in past lives, but we're not sure who they are now, or if they're alive right now as somebody or not. And we want to like run into them again if they're here again. And if not, then well, we would try. My husband, who's like very intuitive and very like connected to spirit guides and to the other side sometimes. He can sometimes contact people and find out if they're reincarnated yet. Other times he can't. Other times we can't. And other times, even I sometimes have, moments where, I can sense if somebody is reincarnated or not. But, like someone we knew, it has to be someone we knew so that because we have a connection where we can sense it. But, um, other times, like, it's like I need his help or neither of us are in touch because we are too stressed or whatever. But, other times, I don't know, but he's the one that really like does that and sees the spirit guides. Like I just see them with my third eye, but he sees them with his eyes. Like sometimes, like he can do that, and I hear them with I guess my third ear. I don't know, like and he hears them like for real, and like not for real because it's for real anyway. But like I will say like okay, where's hey wait, where's Argos that bear? Bear spirit guide and because some of them are animals or they manifest as them. I mean, if one of them wanted to manifest to show up as a steaming pile of dog shit, then they could. But they could and spirits are shapeshifters. They can be anything they want to be, but they want to they choose to manifest as what we would recognize them as when we were sharing lives together as mortals or whatever. And back when we were animals, because we were at some point, one of them was a bird back then with us, and he's still a bird. He still like manifests as a bird for Teddy. He's Teddy's main spirit guide, and the other one a bear, who's one of my spirit guides, my main one. Well, he was our friend when we were bears. I mean, so and Father Raymond is a big main spirit guide of ours. He tells us, the light is in you, the light is around you, the light is with you, and we have to like remember that and everything, and that our writing will be done when it's meant to be done, precisely when it needs to be, he said. And do not fear not the obstacles in your path; they will be easily moved, or they can be easily moved, and or then they will be easily moved. And he said that, and he just is a very uplifting person, and he's somebody that has helped me so much. He's someone who's helped Teddy so much. He's someone who's like, and he was a guy that we knew like in as a human in various lives too, and he was a bartender, so it's not that the drinking is some sort of non-spiritual or non-god thing, because he was a bartender in one life in Russia, and then in another time and he could be multiple people at once because he's one of them, not one of where you have to be one person at a time, or where you are one person at a time, or choose to be, or whatever, because he can like it's like a string with knots in it, it's like the same person but yet in different bodies, where like a string that has like a knot here and knot here, but it's still the same string, and uh but anyway, Father Raymond, um he's somebody that has, whenever I call on him, and he's told us, why don't you call on me more often? I don't understand why you don't, kind of thing. So we did, and he never fails us. Just like Weinstock has never steered. Weinstock is the bird that has never steered Teddy wrong. He calls the bird Weinstock because in the bird's like actual name, like you can't pronounce it in human language because it's in bird language. And same thing with the bear that that has been named Artos for a while by us for like a few centuries. And the bear that's my like main spirit guide besides like Father Raymond. And anyway, I'll shut up now, I guess. I've said that before, but I will now, and I'll like start a new one about related stuff, I guess.